sort of research and this sort of field, and I expect it's probably sort of something which you can relate to.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you brought up, among other things in connection to this, downloading information or whatever, or what have you. And speaking about values, as this is a kind of communication with some, interdimensional consciousness or other being of some kind. If we were to relate this back again, maybe to the David Icke connection, we have a lot of these themes, it seems like, running through throughout history. We have encounters with, of course, Crowley and his ayahuasca, or the angel that lamb, that's right, that appeared before him and so forth. And we have religious figures, Muhammad and his archangel or whatever it was.
Absolutely.
Do you think it's about communication with some other entity, or is this something that is in people's own psyche that is coming to light or coming forward? What's your take on it?
I don't necessarily sort of see those two things as being mutually exclusive. Certainly, I mean, I'm sort of not a religious person. Neither am I particularly interested in spirituality. But nonetheless, I sort of still feel as though I'm sort of coming from a place which was sort of quite unseen. And, sort of my particular practice really simply consists of I'm sort of throwing my mind out there into the other place and just, sort of seeing what sort of turns up in the nets.
Yeah.
And I think that's something which we can all do, and I think that I think that's what our controllers, shall we say, are actually quite afraid of. Hence we have the education system, which teaches us these very left brain sort of methods of studying and so on, which really are in some ways wholly unnecessary. And yet at the same time, I think it's an important foundation for future research of the kind that I'm talking about. But
do you think it's do you think it's in kind of a new field? I don't know. I guess we could bring up a little bit about our friend Jake Kotze, I guess, and his kind of work. Do you think that this is a spearheading into a new area of looking at things in our modern world and connecting them all together? I know that even Guru Adachi does this a little bit. Do you think that is the what is happening here?
Certainly I hope so. I mean, I can only really speak for myself, and I'm a sort of lone voice really out here with a PC. I have sort of very little contact with the outside world of any kind in some ways, but I feel what I do is important, and increasingly I can sense that there are more and more people who are also starting to feel that way, but not necessarily about my work, but about others as well, about Red Ice, about Jake's work, also about Goro, as you mentioned. Certainly I think there are more and more people who are starting to look at these subjects.
Definitely.
And hopefully I'm trying to convey this sort of sense of how we look at them, And I look at some researchers who still have this very sort of left brain sort of obsession with content and with rightness. And personally, I think that is sort of somewhat sort of somewhat Piscean, you might say. And increasingly, I feel it's very important that we just use our intuition.
Yeah.
And I think that all the answers, if we're sensitive, if we simply start listening, if you start paying attention and making those connections, I think there's going to be a lot of information pouring out of each and every one of us. Sort of rather than being something which is sort of sacred. Sort of something which is sort of controlled by a priesthood of some kind.
I see what you mean. So, if we were to talk about, do you feel that it's difficult to validate the threads that you find, or is this more like a gut feeling that you get?
No. I'm glad that's an interesting question, because like having said everything I have just said about using intuition and about sort of almost channeling, although that's not what I do, I must stress that. but I'm almost so far as I'm concerned, everything I write can be corroborated in terms of facts, and I think that's very important that we have that sort of sense of integrity. Sort of some researchers in various fields, and I'm not going to name names necessarily, but sort of some researchers are simply sort of selling merchandise, and so constantly always have to have a new and exciting sort of series of revelations that they offer to the audience, and that. I see nothing. I see nothing inherently wrong with that if it's entertaining people. But nonetheless, I try and stick very closely sort of to evidence and to facts which I have found and which are, as far as I'm concerned, true, which can stand up. But at the same time, I sort of spin around with this very intuitive framework, which is, I suppose, sort of more an expression of sort of lyricism and poetry rather than hard, cold facts.
That's interesting. You say that poetry, because I think that also that you manage the language in a very different way. I can
exactly. Now I'm pleased we're getting onto this one, only because you're talking to me. You can tell that I don't necessarily enjoy speaking and sort of communicating with people all the time. It isn't really my forte, but but words and so words and language are something which I have a great deal of interest and love for, and it's something I'm very good at. And so I can't easily talk to you about content, only because I'm very much about other things, about medium and about message, rather than about necessarily sort of spinning a line. Hopefully this is starting to make sense to you in some way.
We're catching up here and trying to figure out how you work and why you write the things you do. So this is excellent stuff here. One thing I also wanted to ask you a little bit about is I know that you've been following in your recent postings this story of Madeleine McCann.
Yes, I have been indeed, and it is an extremely interesting story. And actually, if you had spoken to me last week, I was actually coming sort of to you live from Greenwich, which is where I believe sort of so much of this story is not necessarily being orchestrated from, but I can see that there are connections with Greenwich sort of through the maritime signals, which I've been writing about at some length recently.
Yeah. I mean, have you been following the Madeleine story? Most recently, I haven't even followed it from the start. What was she kidnapped? What happened there?
Well, I mean that's an extremely moot point, because no one really absolutely concretely knows. But nonetheless, of course, it is being pushed very hard that that's what's happened to her. Sort of by her parents in particular, who have shown incredible strength of character, or in fact possibly something quite different. So lots of people in this country, particularly on the forums and so on, have been noticing how cold these parents seem, how almost it could be said how very how extremely controlled they are, and how very, very focused they are. And especially Jerry McCann, who is of course Madeleine's father, he seems very focused on his campaign, which is earning, well, let's be frank about it, him and his immediate family shitloads of dollars, my friend. A lot of money is being put into this PayPal internet campaign, where you can log on and you can see the various propaganda messages that are up there, and you can so get your credit card out and actually donate, and it's raking in a lot of money. And people have noticed, for example. And I don't buy this one necessarily, and I'll tell you why, but let's just get on to what I'm trying to say. But anyway, lots of people have noticed that he and his wife have not publicly cried. And I think that this is something which is kind of connected with the whole Princess Diana thing in this country, whereby post 1997, people, public figures, and especially people who have gone through traumas, are expected to sort of shed tears at every possible occasion. And I think that there are people, particularly people who we might refer to as chavs here in Great Britain. That's probably not a word that you understand.
No,
but
it's
if there
not.
are people listening in Britain, they'll be pissing themselves laughing.
Okay.
But people who, as I say, chavs, sort of seem to expect that everything should be, everything should be overblown and melodramatic and tearful.
Mm-hmm.
So hence, her parents, sort of seemingly being so stoical, have certainly attracted a great deal of suspicion. Some of it unfounded, but at the same time, I think some of it is extremely well-founded.
So, what do you think is going on here? Why no tears, as it were?
Yeah, well, all I can say about this one, Henrik, if you don't mind, is it is an extremely big story, and it would be hard for me. It would not be easy or even possible, sort of simply to sort of talk you through it step by step. Only because I'm still in the process of kind of getting my thoughts together on that one and actually publishing it in, out there on the blog.
Sure.
All I can say is that I'm hoping that the people who are listening to this are people, and I know sort of some of them, definitely will be listening, who have been following my work for some time, and I've been stressing over the last month about this story and saying that if you can follow this, and if you can finally piece it together, I promise you it will blow your head off. It is a massive conspiratorial story, and I'm not convinced it will ever fully be told. But if it is going to be told, it'll be told by me.
That sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Something to look forward then to, I guess, here.
Yeah, I mean, if I can start, I can throw out a few hints to you, clearly, but I mean, if you just look at the name for one thing, that really starts, throwing out a few clues. Also, if you look at the kind of people who her parents have actually roped in, or possibly it's the other way around, that is the even more interesting sort of consideration we need to bear in mind. People who are actually involved in this story, people like Gordon Brown, so people like Tony Blair, so people like the Pope. The Pope. I mean, you can't get a lot bigger than that. Now, as everyone has said, everybody, people have mentioned this, it has been said, but it needs to be said again. I mean, hundreds of thousands of kids, of course, sadly and tragically, end up going missing every year.
That's right.
And there aren't that many parents who end up meeting, sort of people of that kind of caliber.
Sure.
So quite clearly, all these forces are lining up to actually get involved. Something is afoot, isn't it? It almost stands to reason that there's something going on behind the scenes which is not right, and everybody is sensing that. It isn't only the conspiracy theories; it's actually out there in the public. The only thing is that it's not being reported on.
So do you want to give us a hint here on what you think? I'm thinking about a few things, what potentially this might be and so forth, but I'm not quite sure where you're heading with this. You mentioned, among other things, the name Madeline. Tell us about the significance of that then.
Well, if again, it is very difficult for me. I know this is sort of it sounds like a cop-out, but only because, as I say, I'm still receiving information about this, and I'm not absolutely confident about speaking out on it right now. Only because I don't think. Only because I'm still sort of dealing with my impressions of the matter rather than having drawn any firm conclusions.
Right. Yeah.
All I can say is that if you think about sort of Roman Catholicism, if you think about who their central character is, and then if you think about this name Madeline, you can start to draw some very interesting connections, especially when we are being constantly exhorted on the front sort of covers of our tabloid press that we should be praying for Madeline, praying for Madeline. I'm not praying to Madeline. Can you start to see where I'm going now?
Yeah.
If it's out there subliminally, it's this enormous. It's this enormous, I wouldn't say Catholic plot, because it isn't essentially that at all, but I think you can start to see, like where I'm heading, can't you now?
current theme?
Yes, absolutely. are themes which I've looked at in my work for sure, which is very, I take I take M as simply as it were